This is the digital channel of the General Overseas Service of All India Radio. I am Manoj Mainkar, and in the next half hour, I'll bring to you news updates from India and around the world, awareness videos on coronavirus by Government of India, and a lot more. We'll begin with the news updates.
This is the General Overseas Service of All India Radio. Namaskar. The news snippets. India has categorically stated that it has not transgressed the line of actual control (LAC) at the Indo-China border in Ladakh. China's allegations are baseless and are an attempt to mislead some an international audience by Beijing. Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has said that India and China need to discuss issues deeply at the political level. He said the state of the border cannot be delinked from the state of the relationship. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar will be leaving for Moscow to take part in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Foreign Ministers meeting. En route, Dr. Jaishankar will stop over in Tehran. He will have discussions with Iranian Foreign Minister Dr. Javad Zarif. Nutrition Month is being observed all over the country. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has given a call for including seasonal food ingredients in our nutrition. India's COVID-19 cases has seen a slight decrease in the last 24 hours. 75,809 cases were reported on Monday. 33,23,950 people have recovered from COVID-19 in India till now. In the last 24 hours, 73,251 recoveries were reported. The recovery rate continues to be over 77.65%. 10,98,621 tests were conducted for COVID-19 in the past 24 hours. More than 5.06 crore tests have been conducted till now. Chinese President Xi Jinping has called off his visit to Pakistan over corruption issues related to the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, though the official reason given is the COVID-19 pandemic. Saudi Arabia has sentenced 8 people for the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has set a deadline of 15th October for a deal with the European Union. And that is the end of the news snippets.
Every voyage is inspired by a natural human longing of people to see and explore a new world. Travelers in ancient days used to get information about new places from merchant groups. What such visitors recorded later revealed to us details of our ancient history. Much of our knowledge of ancient and medieval Indian history comes from the accounts of foreigners who as pilgrims, travelers and traders crossed the seas and difficult land routes to reach India. In their writings on their observations and experiences of a country new and strange to them, they left valuable contributions to the historical understanding of early Indian society. In our program Travelogue, we bring to you some of the foreign travelers' account of India and their understanding of Indian culture and civilization.
Around 1520, a Portuguese traveller, Domingo Page, came to the city of Vijayanagar, the capital of what is known as the Vijayanagar Empire, that dominated a large part of India from the mid-14th to the 17th century. Page came here as part of a group of traders from the then Portuguese settlement of Goa. Krishnadeva Raya was the king of the Vijayanagar Empire then, and Page in his account wrote the following. The king is of medium height and of fair complexion and good figure, rather fat than thin. He has on his face signs of smallpox. He is the most feared and perfect king that could possibly be, cheerful of disposition and very merry. He is one that seeks to honor foreigners. He is a great ruler and a man of much justice. but subject to sudden fits of rage. And this is his title, Krishna Rao Masagao, King of Kings, Lord of the Greater Lords of India, Lord of the Three Seas and of the land. He has this title because he is by rank a greater lord than any, and by reason of what he possesses in armies and territories. So gallant and perfect is he in all things. Any writing on the history of the Vijayanagar Empire invariably cites the account of the Portuguese chronicle written by Domingo Peixe. The description of the capital Vijayanagara, now located near a small village called Hampi, that has captured the imagination of the scholars, has been based on Peixe's noting an observation about the glorious capital city. The accounts of various temples, the celebration of the Mahanavami festival, and the role of the king in both temples and festivities in the narratives of Peixe has been valuable source of information. Domingo Peixe referred to the capital as Bisnaga, probably the Portuguese rendering of Vijayanagara, the city of victory. Domingo Peixe, as he tells us in his account, was accompanying a Portuguese mission headed by a certain Cristovão de Figueiredo to the capital city. As a result, Peixe met the Vijayanagar king Krishnadeva Raya personally and was able to observe first-hand the life inside the palace and court in addition to that of the city. For Peixe, the sense of action is the capital Vijayanagara. Beginning with an account of the geography of the coast and outskirts of the capital, trading towns on the west coast of the present-day Karnataka, and political boundaries, the kingdom is described as prosperous, fertile, dotted with tank irrigation and waterworks, cities, towns and merchants. Peixe writes, "The size of this city I do not write here, because it cannot all be seen from any one spot. But I climbed a hill whence I could see a great part of it. I could not see it all because it lies between several ranges of hills. What I saw from thence seemed to me as large as Rome, and very beautiful to the sight. There are many groves of trees within it, in the gardens of the houses, and many conduits of water which flow into the midst of it. And in places there are lakes, and the king has close to his palace a palm grove and other rich bearing fruit trees." Further, Peixe records, "This is the best provided city in the world, and is stocked with provisions such as rice, wheat, grains, Indian corn, and a certain amount of barley and beans, moong, pulses, horse gram, and many other seeds which grow in this country, which are the food of the people. And there is a large store of these and very cheap. But wheat is not so common as the other grains, since no one eats it except the Moors." About the marketplace, Peixe writes, "Going forward, you have a broad and beautiful street, full of rows of fine houses and streets of the sort I have described. And it is to be understood that the houses belong to men rich enough to afford such. In this street live many merchants, and there you will find all sorts of rubies and diamonds and emeralds and pearls and seed pearls and clothes and every other sort of thing there is on earth and that you may wish to buy. Then you have there every evening a fair where they sell many common horses and nags, and also many citrons and limes and oranges and grapes and every other kind of garden stuff and wood you have all in the street." However, most of the account revolves around the king, his daily routine, his household and activities, along with a graphic description of the palace. Peixe writes, "The king is accustomed every day to drink a quartillo, that is 3/4 pint of oil of gingerly before daylight, and anoints himself all over with the said oil. He covers his loins with a small cloth, and takes in his arms great weights made of earthenware, and then taking a sword, he exercises himself with it till he has sweated out all the oil, and then he wrestles with one of his wrestlers. After this labor, he mounts a horse and gallops about the plain in one direction and another till dawn, for he does all this before daybreak. Then he goes to wash himself, and a Brahmin washes him, whom he holds sacred, and who is a great favorite of his, and is a man of great wealth. And after he is washed, he goes to where his pagoda is inside the palace, and makes his orisons and ceremonies according to custom. Thence he goes to a building made in the shape of a porch without walls, which has many pillars hung with cloths right up to the top, and with the walls handsomely painted. It has on each side 2 figures of women very well made. In such a building he dispatches his work with those men who bear office in his kingdom, govern his cities, and his favorites talk with them. While describing the architecture of the temples, pattern of worship in them, and beliefs of the people residing in the city and the urban layout, Page was definitely fascinated by its magnificence and grandeur. His narrative conveys in unequivocal terms the control of the king in the city and the kingdom that he built. For instance, in one case, the power of the king is shown through the court etiquette. After the king has talked with these men on subjects pleasing to him, he bids enter the lord and the captains who wait at the gate, and these at once enter to make their salam to him. As soon as they appear, they make their salam to him and place themselves along the wall far off from him. They do not speak one to another, nor do they chew betel before him, but they place their hands in the sleeves of their tunics and cast their eyes on the ground. And if the king desires to speak to any one, it is done through a second person, and then he to whom the king desires to speak raises his eyes and replies to him who questions him, and then returns to his former position. So they remain till the king bids them to go, and they all return to make salam to him and go out. The salam, which is the greatest courtesy that exists among them. Every day they go to make the salam to the king. The courteous way in which the king received the mission of Cristóvão de Figueiredo and the accompanying Portuguese group, of which Page was a part of, the type of gifts that the king presented to the mission as a token of friendship and love, and finally, the guided tour of the palace by a high-ranking official impressed Page immensely. For Page, the kingship was a spectacle, closely identified with court rituals and ceremonies. The famous Mahanavami festival that has become a theme of analysis for understanding the connections between rituals, religion and politics find an elaborate mention in his accounts, and he participated in its festivities as a spectator along with his fellow Portuguese guests. This eyewitness account in many ways conveys an Orientalist's wonder and amazement. According to Page, this 9-day festival is an occasion when all the officers and captains of the kingdom gather in the capital where the king is present and give lavish gifts to him. The worship of the idol of the goddess, elaborate animal sacrifice by the king, grand feasts, performances of dancing girls and wrestlers are some of the highlights discussed elaborately. For example, Page writes, "In all this portion of the day, nothing more is done than this wrestling and dancing of the women. But as soon as evening the sun is down, many torches are lit and some great flambeaux made of cloth, and these are placed about the arena in such a way that the whole is as light as day, and even along the top of the walls, for all the battlements are lighted lamps, and the place where the king sits is all full of torches. As soon as these are lit up, there are introduced many very graceful plays, but these do not stop long. They only approach where the king is and then go out. And then there enter others in other fashion, with battles of people on horseback. When these amusements are ended, they begin to throw up many rockets and many different sort of fires, also castles that burn and fling out from themselves many bombs and rockets. When these fireworks are finished, there enter many triumphant cars or chariots which belong to the captain, some of them sent by those captains who are waging war in foreign parts, and they enter thus. When the cars or chariots are gone out, they are immediately followed by many horses covered with trappings and clothes of very fine stuffs. Despite such rich details of the city in Page's writing, we do not know much about him. According to some scholars, what we read today was not Page's original account, but was copied by someone in Goa. Thereafter, from Goa, they were dispatched to China, and from there to Lisbon to a Portuguese official and historian, João de Barros, who was also the author of Décadas da Asia, published initially in 3 volumes. There is a possibility that Barros may have used these accounts while writing his Decada. Page's accounts should be seen within the context of the establishment of the Portuguese state in Cochin and subsequently in Goa as the viceroyalty of the Kingdom of Portugal. Reflections on Vijayanagar, that was an area of interface for the Portuguese due to overlapping political and maritime concerns, would be a subject of interest not purely from a traveller's point of view, but in all likelihood important from a political perspective. So for Page, Vijayanagar would be an area of interest not because of its only being a powerful political entity, but also because of its interactions with the Portuguese on the west coast, where the maritime interests and trading interests were interlocked with it. Perhaps Domingo Page was commissioned by an official in Goa, who in turn was commissioned by Barros on behalf of the Portuguese crown to collect and provide material about Vijayanagar to Barros. Knowledge about Vijayanagar was crucial in strengthening the Portuguese moorings and secured the Vijayanagar rulers as important allies against the Zamorin of Calicut, a formidable power who controlled the trade on the Malabar coast in Kerala. A British administrator around 1900, Robert Sewell, wrote a book on the Vijayanagar titled A Forgotten Empire, Vijayanagar, a contribution to the history of India, written around the beginning of the 20th century and considered to be perhaps the earliest modern history on the Vijayanagar. Sewell incorporated for the first time the translation of the Chronicles of Page and another fellow Portuguese traveller, Fernão Nunes. Thereafter, these translations began to be used widely. Any writing on the history of the Vijayanagar Empire invariably cites the accounts of the Portuguese chronicle written by Domingo Page and Fernão Nunes. Such is the value of these accounts that they would never be forgotten and cannot be ever ignored.
In our program Travelogue, you were listening to some of the foreign travellers' account of India and their understanding of Indian culture and civilization. This program came to you from the General Overseas Service of All India Radio.
You are with us on the General Overseas Service of All India Radio. We now bring you today's commentary, BRICS Foreign Ministers Meeting. It is scripted by Dr. Ashnarayan Roy, Director, Institute of Social Sciences, Delhi. The global summits and high-level multilateral meetings face unusual challenges in view of the ongoing pandemic. When key decision makers are all present in one location, lobbying and working out give and take positions of individual member country becomes easy. However, when these key figures can only be reached online, they become fragmented across the enormity of the digital world. In the absence of the crucial diplomatic coffee breaks, taxi rides, and late night dinners, adopting new strategies or advocating certain line of positions become an uncharted territory. However, virtual summits and high level meetings through video conferences are becoming the new norm. Russia is hosting the Brics and Seo Summits this year. Last week saw both these meetings being held in the same week, the Seo Defense Ministers meeting in Moscow and the Brics Foreign Ministers meeting, which was of course through video conference. The Brics Summit had originally been scheduled for July but was later moved to October in view of the coronavirus scourge. Moscow had been very keen on one-to-one meetings of foreign ministers and national security advisors. India too favored the same, as it is taking over the BRICS chair in 2021. In view of the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, the discussions among BRICS foreign ministers centered around an overview of the global situation and the key issues on the 75 UN General Assembly agenda. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, in his forceful intervention, emphasized the need to reform the UN to reflect contemporary global realities. He also called for expansion of the UN Security Council in both permanent and non-permanent categories. India's commitment to multilateralism remains unwavered, though India strongly favors reform of international bodies like UN, WTO, IMF, WHO, etc. India has made enormous contribution to the United Nations through the efforts of its government, peacekeeping forces, the work of Indian scholars, and international civil servants. India has been one of the most eloquent voices helping the United Nations shape its agenda on behalf of the developing world. And yet, the status quo and procrastination on Security Council reforms are untenable. There is a sense that multilateral diplomacy has been undermined by certain countries. India feels the mandate for early reforms has been compromised for the nefarious gains of some countries. Dr. Jaishankar explained how the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiated by India is a dynamic and mutually beneficial global economic engagement, as it holds the key to achieving rapid growth and development. External Affairs Minister also highlighted the scourge of terrorism and called for enhanced BRICS cooperation in countering the scourge. He expressed satisfaction on the conclusion of the BRICS counter-terrorism strategy. The meeting strongly condemned terrorism in all its forms and manifestations, whenever, wherever, and by whomsoever committed. The BRICS foreign ministers discussed at length the strategies to combat new infectious diseases. While acknowledging the role played by the WHO, they stressed the importance of enhancing BRICS countries' positive contribution to the international public health security. More significantly, the meeting underlined the need to collaborate vigorously to deal with the adverse impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on the enjoyment of social and economic rights and the right to development. India has helped over 150 countries in the global fight against COVID-19. All said, BRICS faces a new moment of reckoning. There is a growing feeling that if China continues its aggressive behavior and seeks to hollow WTO, BRICS, and other global institutions, India should gradually move away from these groupings. China's coercive pursuit of its agenda has already forced India to downgrade some cooperative elements of its ties with China. Some suggest instead of BRICS and SCO, India should pursue Quad Plus strategy that should include Indonesia, Vietnam, South Korea, and Singapore. If China insists on rewriting rules for its own ends, it will not only be at odds with rules-based international order, it will also put a big question mark on BRICS' future. That was a commentary on BRICS Foreign Ministers meeting. It was scripted by Dr. Ashnarayan Roy, Director, Institute of Social Sciences, and read by Kaushik Rai. This broadcast came to you from the General Overseas Service of All India Radio.
This broadcast came to you from the digital channel of the General Overseas Service of All India Radio.